Good morning. And I realize I have left the book on the shelf. Welcome to Practical Christian Lessons. We're going through Wisdom of Solomon 16 today. It's part of our reading through the Apocrypha series, where we're just hoping to give some historical understanding to the Second Temple period and some of the thoughts underlying Jesus' own day, and using it as sort of a devotional literature. You know, it's not part of my canon, and it's historically been one of those disputed books. Otherwise, it probably would be part of my canon if it wasn't one of the disputed books. I have a few videos at the start of the playlist. You can go through and look at some of those discussions and my full stance on it. Still in sling. This shirt, not sponsored, is from Disciple Dojo. Is Do Justice, Love Mercy. There's a little bit more at the bottom. Great YouTube channel. Highly recommend it. It is definitely an educational channel, but not quite the same as we are. Right, I'm doing read-throughs of like Apocrypha, focusing on Wesleyan Arminianism. He does Bible studies, interviews. He does study Bible reviews. Lots of those. Lots of good ones. Highly recommend his channel. Go check it out. He's a Methodist as well. Just a slightly different focus on our channels. And he's much bigger, and I think much better at what he does. We are going to be going through Wisdom of Solomon 16. It's going to look a little different than the short. This is the fourth time I'm recording this. So if I seem flustered and like I'm rushing through, it's because I am. I've been here for a while now, trying to get this done. Wisdom of Solomon 16. Therefore, they were worthily punished through creatures like these, and they were tormented through a multitude of wild animals. Instead of such punishment, you showed kindness to your people, and prepared qualls as food with a delicious taste to satisfy their hunger. That those men, when they desired food, might turn away from their necessary hunger because of the ugly look of the creatures sent upon them. While your people, being in need for a brief period, might partake of food with a delicious taste. For it was necessary for those enemies that unavoidable need come upon them and tyrannize them, while to your people it was only shown how their enemies were being tormented. For even when the terrible rage of wild animals came upon your people, and they were being destroyed by the bites of twisting serpents, your wrath did not continue to the end. They were troubled for a short while as a warning, and received a pledge of salvation in remembrance of your lost commands. For the one who turned to it was saved, not by what he saw, but by you, the Savior of all. So this in you persuaded our enemies, that you are the one who saves from every evil. For the bites of locusts and flies killed them, and no healing was found for their life, because they deserved to be punished by such things. But the teeth of poisonous serpents did not overcome your children, for your mercy came to their aid and healed them, for they were goaded to remind them of your oracles and were quickly saved, lest they should fall into deep forgetfulness, and be continually unmindful of your kindness. For neither herb nor medicinal plaster healed them, but it was your word, O Lord, which heals all men. For you have authority over life and death, and bring men down to the gates of Hades, and lead them back again. A man in his malice kills another, but he cannot bring back a departed spirit, nor return a soul that is taken. And this next section is God judges Egypt. So we're going from wilderness back into Egypt here. To escape from your hand is impossible, for the ungodly who refused to know you were flogged by the strength of your arm. They were pursued by rains, hail, and thunderstorms, and consumed by fire. For the fire, very contrary to expectation, was more effective in the water, which extinguishes everything. For the world is the world is a defender of the righteous. For at one time the flame was subdued, that it might not burn up the creatures sent against the ungodly. But seeing this, they might know that they were struck by the judgment of God. And at another time, even underwater, the flame burned more intensely than fire, to destroy the harvest of the unrighteous land. All right, no sneeze. And this next is bread from heaven for Israel. Instead of these things, you fed your people the food of angels, and without their labor you provided them with ready-made bread from heaven, fitting for every pleasure and suitable for every taste. For your provision manifested sweetness towards your people, and the bread served the need of those who took it, and changed to what one wished. Snow and ice endured fire without melting, so they might know that the fire destroyed the harvest of their enemies. The fire that burned in the hail and flashed like lightning in the rain. Again, the fire which forgot its own natural power, that the righteous might be fed. For the creation serves you, who made it and increases its intensity to punish the unrighteous, but in kindness relaxes itself on behalf of those who trust in you. Therefore also at that time it explored as though in a mine your all-nourishing bounty, and served the will of those who supplicated you, that your children whom you loved, O Lord, might learn, that it is not the production of crops that feeds men, but your word that maintains those who believe in you. For what is not destroyed by fire was melted when simply warmed by a small ray of the sun, to make it known that one must get up before sunrise to give you thanks and to intercede before you at the dawning of the light. For the hope of an unthankful man will melt away like the wintry frost and flow away like useless water. This is Wisdom of Solomon 16. And my brain's going through a lot. Try and keep it short. Charles Spurgeon does have a sermon on the manna, which will be something we're going to be talking about today and sort of focusing on. Highly recommend it. I'll try and find a link to the sermon, a YouTube audio version of it, and put it in the doobly-doo below. But I think this, instead of hearkening on some of the stuff we've been talking about the past few days, is to focus on the judgment for the wicked, the flip side of that, which is kindness towards God's people. And that's part of the plagues, right? When you read the Exodus narrative, we're in Lent right now. There's a reason I sort of picked the Wisdom of Solomon to go first. I knew this was coming. I knew we're in Lent, so a lot of churches are going through the Exodus right now. A lot of the time you go through the Exodus, and I myself do this. Almost every time I read this is the lens I'm viewing it through. It's the justice of God. This is judgment for the wickedness of Israel. But Exodus goes on for 25 more chapters. And it says it in the plagues narrative itself. When Jesus is talking to Moses, when he's talking to the people, when the biblical narrators are telling us what's going on, it's not just judgment. It's a message to the nations that this is God, this is his glory, this is his power, and this is the judgment for disobeying God, for being so wicked that he must enforce punishment on you. And it's instruction to the Hebrews. And in the midst of the plagues, it's also a mercy, which is probably a hard lens to view it through. But when you go through the laws following the narrative, especially in 20 through 24, is where my brain's in right now, you see the mercy of God amidst his judgment. And I think that's part of the focus of the Exodus narrative. God said he could have, in the middle of it, he could have just killed everybody. He could have simply wiped them all out and been done with it. Instead, what he does is he brings down these plagues to show that the gods of Egypt are nothing but false idols, that Pharaoh is just a man, that they cannot stand up to the power and the glory of God, that nature itself bends to God's will, despite the Egyptian gods that say they have domain over it. And he topples them over one by one. He shows that he can bring his judgment, but that he can also provide through it. When it talks about the fire in the midst of the hail, that's in the middle of the 10 plagues, and the hail, there's fire. I think that harkens back to Sodom and Gomorrah. But that's showing God's absolute control and his absolute power, that there's this fire that's not melting the hail as it's coming down. And I think part of it being instruction is the merciful part. It's not just saying, don't do this. God's also trying to tell you which way to go. When you go through the laws, it harkens back to the Exodus narrative again and again and again. I think that's part of the purpose. I think it's trying to show you justice and mercy. The laws that are given to Israel extend to everyone in Israel's land. They extend to the Israelites themselves. They extend to the widows, to the orphans, to the poor, to the sojourners, the travelers in the land, to the animals even. Abraham's covenant, his promise to him was, you will be a blessing to all nations. And I think that's what the laws are for. It's not just instruction on how to be a holy people, be holy as God is holy. To be able to live in the presence of a holy God, residing in the Holy of Holies, who his mere presence and holiness impacts the land around it. You cannot be unholy near him. It will bring death to you. That is just a fact. Unholiness cannot abide with holiness. And God's laws, I don't think, are just instructions and don't do this or you will face punishment. It's also show mercy. Again and again in those laws, I think it's 22 around there. Maybe it's chapter 23. Do not kill and oppress the widow and the orphan, or your wives and your children will become widows and orphans. And you're like, oh, that's harsh. Yeah, that's harsh. That's punishment. But there's also the call, not just for justice there. That's the warning. The call is to be merciful. The call is to show love. That is what you are supposed to do. And I think that's the whole point of the laws. I think it's the whole lens you need to read through the plagues, through the punishment of Egypt, through the instruction of the Hebrews, is to teach them, not just to be holy, but to be loving, to be merciful, what it is to be the people of God, to be a blessing to all the nations, to pull from the New Testament, to be the salt of the earth, to be the light of the world, to show people God. You must be like God. Right? The shirt, I think, I did not intend to wear this, but do justice, love mercy, walk humbly. That's, I think, the lesson of the plagues, of the laws. That's what God is telling his people. That is what he's moving them towards. And that's just so beautiful. And that's part of the exodus that Jesus takes us through, right? It's freedom from sin, freedom from death. It will be overcome. But in the meantime, we need to be a holy people as God is holy. We need to do justice. We need to love mercy. We need to walk humbly. And we need to be a people of God that shows the world God as he truly is. And if you read the laws like that, and yes, Leviticus is dry and boring, the Exodus laws can be difficult to get through. They can offend our modern sensibilities. But if you look at the ancient world and how they viewed widows and orphans and travelers and animals and slaves, they viewed them as just pure property, as not worth anything. And the Exodus laws, even the animals, even the slaves, the widows, the orphans, they're lifted up too. They're raised to higher standards than the rest of the world treats them. The entire law is about showing love and mercy to everyone. And yes, there's a warning of God's justice and his judgment, but it's couched in that. And I think that's the lens we need to look at it, and the lens we need to live in our daily life and we need to work through is, how do we hold up God as justice and calls us to act like this? And we need to show love and mercy. And we need to understand that's how God is. In Exodus 25 and 6, everyone always talks about God's wrath goes to the third and fourth generation. But that's on the wicked, on his foes. His mercy extends to the 1,000th generation for his friends, for those who follow him, for those who are his children, for those who are the righteous. Like Paul, mercy abounds all the more. I know I'm getting a little fired up here, but I think it's so important. And I think it should bring us so much joy to look at that lens through these things. That this is God showing us his love and mercy and how to show love and mercy to the rest of the world in the midst of also calling us to live honoring that there are sins that we should not transgress and that there are punishment for sins and that there is justice coming. I think that's the balance we have to hold, and that the laws and the Exodus are the perfect way to show that. You guys have a wonderful Lent this season. I encourage everyone, if you're going through Exodus like I am during this Lent season, or if your church is, think about it through that lens, and that's how you should view it. God bless. Amen.